lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and with me today, I have one of my favorite artists in comics. I got Liam Sharp. Did an awesome run on Wonder Woman like a few years ago, which I really loved. Done a lot of other stuff, but right now he is wrapping up his Green Lantern run. I'm sure you're done with it already, but we haven't seen the final issue yet. And one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you too was about the Katz Kickstarter that you're doing. So welcome.
Yeah, cheers, Ryan. It's good to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while since we talked.
Well, thank you for that very generous introduction. I have finished the Green Lantern. It was such a. I loved that run so much. I think I'm still in slight denial about it. I feel like I'm having a break, and I'm going to end up going back to it soon. I miss working with Grant a lot because he's just such a. Well, he's just it was a charm, you know. We made a really good team, I think, and it was a pleasure for both of us. Yeah.
Before we get into the Katz, I was going to ask you later, but let's. I just want to know, what was the experience like for you? I mean, it was unlike any Green Lantern run I've read. It was definitely Grant Morrison was, like some weird shit, and your art, like you said, like you guys, it was like the perfect combo. I mean, it was just so different than any of the rest of the DC line. I liked that it was on its own. It didn't have any crossovers, nothing, just that. Then I was upset too. In the beginning, they were going to shorten season 2, and I remember like at the because I work at a shop, I was very upset. I'm like, why would they shorten it? And then we're getting the full 12 issues, so very excited. I just want to know if you could share the experience, what it's been like, and also what you expect with the finale.
It was a real joy. It was interesting actually, season 2, when it looked like it was going to be shorter, because Grant had obviously planned it all out, and then it was a bit of a shock to both of us that we were going to have to sort of rethink about how it was going to roll out. But in a way, it kind of jolted us too, because it made us go, okay, if we've only got a few issues left, let's kind of go for broke. And we started being much more experimental, because we didn't know we were going to get the full 12, and then we did. And actually, I think it was great for the book, because there'd always been this notion that let's make it as much about not just a story about space and time and, different dimensions, different realities, but also about an exploration of the medium itself, So it started very old school, and then it paid homage to a lot of the early sort of, Green Lantern creators, particularly John Broome and the Gil Kane era. And then as we went through, it sort of became more of a thing like, well, let's explore. If we're going to do a fantasy world, let's do it in a kind of, something that plays to our love of Heavy Metal magazine and 2000 AD and European comics and all of those things. So there was a point where Grant said, this series is like as if 2000 AD European comics and mainstream American comics got together and had a crazy threesome, and this is the offspring of that. Strange mutant offspring. But yeah, it was just an amazing ride, and Grant was a total sweetheart. He right at the end of the last script, he just wrote a personal note just saying, thank you so much for this. It's been about the best time I've ever had in comics, and I've grown as a writer, and thank you. And I was like, my God, the Grant said that to me, So of course I wrote back and said, well, clearly I've grown as an artist. It's a two-way thing. So it was very generous of him to say that. We loved it all the way through. We both there was never nothing even close to any kind of stress between us or feeling that we were going in different directions or had different feelings about the book. So it was very, it was cathartic. It felt right from the off. And I know I'm really, really proud of it. And I'm also, I've got to say, I think it was great that DC let us just do it, let us run with it, and let us be as wild with it, because they never got in the way of any of it. They just stood back and let us go, and it was amazing opportunity. So yeah, I'm very happy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was unlike anything else DC was doing the entire time. Like, and now to hear you say that they just let you guys do what you do, I think that now, like, I'm looking back and I'm thinking about the issues and how, like, really sometimes it gets really weird, but all in a good way. And I think that DC and Marvel, I'm going to lump both of them together. I think they need to sometimes let creators do what they do, because then we get a product like what we have gotten with season 1 and season 2 of your Green Lantern book.
Well, it's interesting because, like, for me, the books that really sold and resonated to me when I was a kid, that blew my mind, there was, like, just one example was when Bill Sienkiewicz was doing Moon Knight, and he did the Hit It issue. It's back in the 80s, and it literally went from his, very mainstream, and he would say himself, he was very inspired by Neil Adams, and he sort of took that as his jump off point, but grew. And then suddenly on that Hit It issue of Moon Knight, Bill Sienkiewicz was born fully formed in this incredible free-form, experimental, kind of scratchy, fascinating, energetic style, and it just blew my mind, And after that, he went on and did the same in the X-Men, and just kept growing artistically, and it was glorious to see that. And obviously, not every book is suited to that. In fact, I was talking to Bill about this a couple of years ago, and he said, "Yeah, you kind of have to sacrifice which books you're going to do. You can't really do that on a Batman book. You can't really do that on the main title of
Right.
Superman. You've got to pick one that is open enough and wild enough that you can be experimental." And I lucked out. I lucked out with the Green Lantern, and it was one of those just moments where there's of synchronicity, where it all came together, and and my dream sort of came true, really. And I was able to do that myself, and just see where I could go with it and just push myself. So it was crazy. It was great.
Yeah, and you started coloring also the book, where
Yeah,
did the beginning, but like then you started coloring. So you're talking about growing as an artist. Like now you're doing all of it. Like that's awesome too. I loved your. It was a completely different like visual thing than we got with Steve Olive's coloring. Like it was something new, and it kind of, to me, like almost reinvigorated to what the comic.
well, I met him at Big WowCon a few years ago, and we hit it off. And he hadn't actually done any coloring for a few years, and he's a legend in his own right. And when this came up, it's kind of a dream to get to work with him. It's such a veteran team. But I did this issue. It's the one in the Antimatter universe, and I'd done it all in black and white grayscale, and I was pretty much painting it. And at that point, I realized that if I was going to do it like that, I might as well do the colors too, because it was taking just as long. It was. So I talked to Steve about it, and I did it. He was having to learn on the go a bit with how to deal with my, pushing the boat out artistically and giving him these crazy grayscale pages. And in the end, he was just like, "Yeah, I think I need to get out of your way, because I think you're growing, and the right thing for me to do now is to stand back and allow you to do that," which was extremely decent of him. And I just loved it. It's the next series I'm doing, the one I'm on right now, I'm doing the same thing. So I'm handling all the color too. I think it's the most fun I've ever had in comics, and I was already having fun in the Green Lantern. But the nice thing about the color is that you can really pick up. I mean, I'm sort of growing all the time, but I try to do it almost like a Pixar film. So there's a color theme for each section. So in that issue 11, like the whole of the stuff that's on, Oa is all kind of green and yellow, and then there's the blues and reds in the sort of barbarian bit, and then, so it's got a theme to it that I can play to for each section, and you can control that much better when you're doing it yourself. It becomes just another tool of the storytelling. So yeah, it's changed my view of it all, actually. It's good. I'm loving it, and thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Oh, I love it, man. It's awesome. I mean, I think it's like, obvious, like, not that I don't like a creative team, like where there's like an ink or a pencil or a colors, different ones, but it's cool to see more of a singular artistic vision on the artist and when they're doing the coloring themselves too. And I think it just adds a different element. And it's cool to hear you say how like you have like the color themed focus issues or the scenes and stuff. That's awesome.
I think the thing is, obviously, I don't want to put inkers out of work or anything like that. But there are times when a book is appropriate to that approach. And as the story grew, that became very much the feel. And I knew we were going to be going back to Athmora. And after I'd done the first issue from the first run, I was like, I also asked way in advance. I said, when we get back to Athmora, can I maybe color those ones? You know, because I had a sense of what I wanted to do. But the weird thing was, it's like I thought it was going to be all. I thought it was going to get all Frazetta-y and, you know, go full on old school sort of barbarian style art on it, and it ended up being something way more experimental and strange and interesting than I ever expected. Our final issue is really out there. Some of the pages, it's not out yet, but it really goes for it. You know, it's if issue 11 felt like it was pushing the envelope a bit, issue 12 really pushes it. Not so far that, you know, it takes away from the story. I think it's a nice, you know, it's a nice wrap up to the whole 24 issues. But I did, like I said, I think the point you make about there being a consistent team on it is really valid, and that's one thing we fought for right at the beginning. Because I said to Dan Didio at the time, I said, you know, I don't want to do 5 issues and then have a couple of fill-ins and then another. I said, I'm going to hit it. I'm going to do every issue. I'm not going to let you down. You're not going to have to wait for me. The book's not going to be late. You're just going to have to trust me. And he did, you know. And I was, because for me, I always liked it when you get one consistent team on a book for a good run, you know. So we fought for that, and it was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that, like you said, I love being able to go, like, that's the Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp run. You know what I mean? Like, no fill-ins. It's just them, and like I think it definitely, like, is something that's missing, I would say, more of in modern comics. We don't always get these. A 24 issue run is like kind of unheard of now. You know what I mean?
Right.
We used to get years of the same creative team, and we just don't get it. So I'm very, very happy you guys did the entire run together. Before we talk about Jack Katz, though, I just want to ask, do you and Grant have any other projects in mind?
We've definitely talked about doing something creative and at some point. What that is, I don't even know myself. You know, he's got so many ideas, and he's worked with me now, so I know when we get around to it, he's gonna have as good a sense as I will about what will suit me and what one won't. But I know he's really busy for the next couple of years, so it'll happen, I'm sure. But I'm actually really keen to do some more writing myself as well. You know, that's since The Brave and the Bold, which I love doing. I've been sort of plugging away at a few pitches. I've written a 6-issue series, which I'm hoping Simon Colby will be able to. Well, he's at the moment he's signed up for drawing that, and that'll be independent. But so I'm doing more writing and trying to get other projects off the ground like that. And obviously I'm on another 6-issue series now, which I can't talk about yet, but it's also exciting. And lots of stuff in the pipeline. We shall see.
Awesome. I'm very excited. Very excited to hear that. I can't wait for your next project to drop. And I'm hoping that they do a nice hardcover collection of the Green Lantern run with Grant, because I love the hardcover collections. DC puts out some really nice ones. So
man, wouldn't it be nice? Grant was saying as well, he hopes they do one of those oversized omnibuses, you know.
Yes, I want an absolute edition. That's what I want. I want the absolute. I want all the sketch material, all the scripts. I want all that stuff. I love that stuff. I think, to me, the absolute editions by DC, they might be my favorite format to collections. I mean, it's just phenomenal what they do. But let's talk Jack Katz. So when did you? Why don't you share how you first became familiar with his work?
Yeah, Jack. I mean, you know, everyone should know about Jack. He's one of those. He's so, in many ways, he's really important to the industry because he's a real pioneer of independent comics. And I stumbled across his art early 2000s. I'm guessing around about 2001, 2002, just online. I can't remember where I first saw it, but someone had posted it. There was a bit of a Jack Katz gallery, and I was like, wait a second, you know, why have I not come across the First Kingdom before? Because everything about it is my kind of thing. You know, I love mythology. I love big, epic, sort of biblical scale stories, and I love particularly as when I was younger, you know, Barry Smith and Bernie Wrightson and Jeff Jones, Mike Kaluta, all of those. That was my jam. That was the stuff I would Buscema on Conan, you know, with Alfredo Alcala inking it. And this felt like a bit like Buscema and a bit like Alfredo Alcala and a bit like all of those guys, Barry Smith, Mike Kaluta. And
Right.
I said, how can I love those guys and have not seen the First Kingdom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking at it, and then it became evident that it was self-published through Bud Plant eventually, and that, you know, mail order technique, you know, very, very different to these days. So, you know, people would have to send off checks and, you know, get it in the mail and all of that. Can you imagine? It's like,
Yeah,
it's nothing like Kickstarter or, you know, digital format delivery or anything like that. You know, no sending files over the internet. Everything had to be sent via the post, and, you know, no scanning old photographic processors. Just a massive undertaking when you think of all of that thing. And he'd been out of comics for a while. He'd started and he'd been in the industry and then left because he was sort of frustrated by it. He felt like it had potential to grow and to be a more mature medium, which is very much his thing. He was always talking about maturing the medium and it being taken seriously. And he felt this sort of crusading pull. You know, he's 93 now. So he started out with people like Alex Raymond, which is insane. He knew Alex Raymond.
Wow.
You know,
That's crazy.
I know. This is probably like the last person alive that actually knew Alex Raymond personally, and Hal Foster he knew as well. I mean, insane. And he used to go and visit Jack Kirby down in LA.
Oh man,
which is crazy. He talks about sitting in the shallow end because he can't swim, and talking of Jack's pool. And they would just talk about comics, and they'd get into big debates. And Jack would be like, "No, it's for the kids," and, you know, Jack Katz would be like, "No, it should be for adults. We can further the industry. We can turn it into a more mature art form." And he kept pushing on this and banging that drum, and then eventually just thought, "Okay, I've got to do it. I've got to draw. I've got all these ideas in my head. They've got to be there for a reason. If I don't tell these stories, then, you know, I shouldn't. What's the point in me having this ability, and what's the point in anything?" So he just felt absolutely compelled to start the First Kingdom. And that was a big old job. So I'd stumbled across that art, saw that, found out about it. And in 2012, I think, there was a Titan did a big series of First Kingdom books. I think it was published 2013. But Steve, the editor, Steve White, knew that I loved Jack's work, and he asked me to do an afterword. So I did that. And then 3 years ago, I don't know if you know Steve Wyatt, but he's a lovely guy who does some of the local conventions around here. And he did like the big WowCon that used to be in San Jose. And he does a lot of smaller local ones. So there's one in Concord, which is the next town along from where I am. And he invited me along, and Jack was there. And I was like, "Oh my God, I've got to go and say hello to this guy," you know. And I guess he would have been 90 then. And it was really noisy, and I just leaned in and said, "Jack, I just got to say, I wrote the afterword in the Titan editions." And he was just like, his eyes lit up, and he was just like, "Oh, this was meant to happen. It was destiny," you know. So he said, "You got to come over, you got to come and see me." And I started, you know, popping around his house, and then he just started pulling out boxes and boxes of this incredible artwork that no one's ever seen. And it's just like, "How much of this is there, Jack?" You know, and he's just like, "Oh, there's some." He's got one that's called, I think it's called The Tale of the City's Heart. It's like 350 pages in it. Never finished it. It's never been published. It's like, it's a huge tome, and we'll be putting some of those pages in there. But a couple of them were from the 60s that had never been published, like full, complete 6-page stories. And that's one that we're going to be publishing both in the pencil form, and I'm inking for the first time. So it's going to be like as it was drawn in the 60s and then inked by me now. And Sandra Hope's inking another one, which is a little romance story. And then there's this 22-page standalone story, again, that had never been published. And that's the one that I thought, actually, this is too big for me to ink. I literally don't have enough hours in a day for that. How about I invite a lot of today's luminaries and see if they want to just do a page, you know, and I thought that might be a good way for us to reach a wider audience to help Jack, because, you know, basically he's just working away every day in his little flat in Richmond, and you know, the only thing that really sustains him is getting up and drawing. That's what keeps him going, and that's what he draws, and no one's seeing it. Nobody knows. So it's
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man, that he is 93 and he is still getting up every day and drawing like that.
Yeah.
Like, just the passion and love for the art form is just, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear.
No, all I was going to say is, like, he calls it the creative tide within, and that's how he always refers to it as that. And it really is. He's driven by what I was talking about earlier on. That, like, it's because he's got these visions in his head and these stories that he just feels completely compelled to do it. It's like, what else is he going to do?
Yeah. So have you been planning this book for like 3 years? Like, did you start like planning doing this project all those years ago, or how long has it been going on?
I think it was about 2.5 years ago. Yeah. So the footage that was filmed, if you go to the Kickstarter page, there's a little film with Jack talking about stuff that was filmed before the pandemic hit. So it was done quite a while ago, you know. As soon as you start involving a lot of different artists, especially working artists, and you're asking them to do something out of the goodness of their heart, you need to build in a decent amount of time, because it was really important to me that anybody who did anything did it for the love of it, you know, for pleasure, and didn't feel pressured that it was going to be something that wasn't going to cause them an issue, like with deadlines or anything like that. So it's had a long gestation period, and you know, but it's been worth it, because the people who've come on board, I'm having to fight people off now, you know. There's almost every day I get a couple more inkers saying, I'll do a page, a couple more like famous artists. It's completely crazy. But I mean, getting people like Bill Sienkiewicz and Art Adams to do stuff in there is just like amazing. You know, Brian Hitch has done a really great piece as well. Just a fantastic lineup of creators. Just looking at the list of it now, because I've you know, we've got Cam Smith, Joe Prada's doing one, Andy Smith, Lee Townsend, Robin Riggs, Andy Lanning, Michael Cho's done a beautiful one, Mike Collins, Mark Lamming, Mike Peters, John Livesey, you know, Raphael Kianan's done an amazing one, which is gorgeous. Andy Curry, from you know, from inking Brian Hitch back in the day, he's done a really, really beautiful one. Bill Reinhold, David Roach, I mean, Rod Ramos, Bill Sienkiewicz. It's just all of these people. I'm very grateful, but you know, they're all fans of Jack. So this is the thing. Oh, and there's another 2-part story. It's one of those things it's called The Imaginator, and it's like Jack had drawn these first 2 pages, and the Imaginator's a storyteller. So we're kind of using that as the framing device for the whole book. He comes in and starts telling stories, and then we have, you know, the complete stories, and then we're going to have a selection of the unfinished stories. So just a random selection of pages from there. But those 2 pages were inked by Mike Perkins, and they're just gorgeous. Wow, so it's a hell of a collection. Yeah,
man. You know, it's so cool to hear like all these artists like yourself and everybody that you just mentioned coming together for the love of comic books and for the like admiration they have for Jack Katz. Because I discovered Jack Katz because I saw that you posted you were doing this Kickstarter, and I'm like, well, if he's doing it, like I'll back this. And then I started reading more about it, and I'm like, dude, this is amazing art, and I never heard of him, you know. So I think probably much like how I discovered Jack Katz through this Kickstarter, I can imagine there's probably a lot of people that are backing this also may have discovered him for the first time. And I just think what you guys are doing it's fucking awesome, man. It's so cool.
Thank you, man.
Doing this.
I know that I have had a lot of people saying, yeah, they've gone out and they bought the First Kingdom after this. You know, they've tracked it down, or they've got the Amazon editions or the Titan editions off Amazon rather. So it's great that it's finding an audience, and it deserves to, honestly, because that's the thing. He finished it in 82, I think, you know, and he turns up at San Diego, having spent 12 years doing over 1,000 pages of the First Kingdom, and he was for a brief moment like the homecoming king, you know. And San Diego Comic-Con, they had for the catalog that year, they had his First Kingdom was on the cover, and he won the Inkwell Award, you know, which is the prestigious one from the convention, which is, you know, I think after the Eisners, that's one of the big ones, you know.
Right.
And I think at that point, it was like, there was all sorts of promises for, like, it's going to be film, and there's going to be TV, and First Kingdom's going to be huge. And sadly, none of those things ever materialized into anything. And I think it was rough. It's, you know, there's an element of like, when you see that, when you learn about artists that dedicate so much of their lives to extraordinary achievements like that, and then they slowly get forgotten. It's like, it's wrong. You got to do something about it, because it's like, you can't help but sort of, it's a touch of there, but for the grace of God go I, you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
You see the potential of what could happen to any of us if circumstances just went south a little bit. So I have felt on a slight crusade to sort of reintroduce people to Jack's work, and you know, and he does deserve it. He definitely deserves to be remembered and appreciated, because it is a massive work. It's important work.
I mean, and would you say that, so would your main motivation was not just to get more eyes on Jack's work, but also help him kind of complete it? Or what would you say was the main motivation for doing this project?
Two things. One was, well, a few things actually, if I think about it. One was to get him some money for a start, because he's not signed up with a publisher. He's just doing it off his own back. So, so this, a lot of what we earn from this Kickstarter will go directly to Jack, and will help him out and help him to keep creating work in the future. The other thing was like, this stuff just needs to be seen. When you see those stories that nobody's seen, it's just crazy. It's like, what would happen to it? Somebody had to do it. So I was just the right person, right place, right time. And that, from that point of view, it didn't seem like, you know, it was much to do with me. It was just, I was just I don't know, an avatar of fate at that point. You know, it's like, it was if I didn't do something, it would have been criminal. So I had to. I had to. And then the other thing is really what we were just talking about, and that's bringing people back to more awareness of Jack's work, you know, and having him rightfully appreciated. Because that book was, the First Kingdom in particular, there's letters from Eisner sort of saying this might be the first graphic novel, the first proper graphic novel. And I know Jack likes to think that it is.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, maybe I've seen it talked about as being as like a proto graphic novel. But I know that he always viewed it as like, and it's interesting because he does struggle with dyslexia. So his writing can take some, his wife used to do the decoding of it back in the day. But he's got an extraordinary lexicon, a very creative lexicon of language. And he's definitely reaching with a view to be making it as literate as he possibly could. You know, it wasn't just about the art; it was about the scale of the story and being a mature story. I mean, there's a lot of nudity all the way through it, but it's not gratuitous. It's not, you know, it's not in any way kind of lascivious, or it doesn't play to that. It's not. That's not part of the pull. It's just that he feels like this is a biblical kind of story, and those characters wouldn't wear clothes.
Right.
So,
and then, so what was the decision to do Kickstarter? Like, instead of maybe going through a more traditional publisher, or was it easier since you guys are coming together and doing it for the love of it, like in terms of like contracts and stuff? Did it make it easier to get it done that way?
I think the thing is, there's not that many publishers in the market for for doing books that are full of unfinished stories for a start. You know,
Right.
the other side of it is I wanted as much as I could. You keep the team small, and Kickstarter, we could see how much could be raised through it, and I think he will get more out of it. My partner on this is Big Wow. It's a good friend of mine, Steve Morga, who's published a lot of art books through Kickstarter. The last one was this beautiful San Julian book. Same kind of approach. He saw San Julian sort of slightly being forgotten and wanted to remind sort of the world about San Julian's amazing art. So Steve and I have come together on this one, and it's a sort of co-production between me and Big Wow. And so he advised on Kickstarter and how it would work and everything, and that's it's proven to be really good so far. I mean, the great thing is the work already exists, so there wasn't the risk of having to get anything done. In terms of risk, that was pretty minimal. I mean, the only issue is keeping him alive so that we can get him to sign everything, you know, and hopefully enjoy the fruits of this labor as well, because he deserves it.
Yeah. And I mean, the response to it has been phenomenal. I mean, you guys have raised the money, right? And you're saying there's like hundreds of pages. So is there a chance, based on the experience of how this ends up, could we see another book possibly?
Oh, possibly, definitely. No, I would say almost certainly. It's just whether we spearhead that one as well, or whether it finds another publisher that's more, you know, like you say, that is able to do it through a more traditional means. We'll see. I mean, it's open. We'll see how big this goes and what the response is, and I think it's. I mean, obviously, it's done really well. It's four times what we needed. Right. So I'm really pleased with that. I hope we get a lot more. Not because at this point, not because of the money, but because it's the equivalent of just over 400 books are backed, and I just think 400's not enough people to see this stuff, you know. Yeah, it's great. It's great in terms of that makes it a successful campaign, but I just think that's only 400 people. It should be more, you know. It should be a lot more. I would love it to get it up into. I mean, it'd be a pain in terms of sending all the books out, but wouldn't it be amazing? What a big problem to have if you get it up to 1,000, 2,000 readers, you know.
Yeah, man.
And I think it's worth it. It's worth it, but obviously I'm biased, and I'd just love that for Jack. That'd be like insane. He would be rightfully, you know, back where he belongs.
Yeah, man. I mean, everybody, you know, if you're listening or you're watching this interview, head over to Kickstarter, and I will drop the link to where you can find it down below. I mean, it's an amazing project. I backed it first day, the minute I saw that it went up. I mean, it just looks phenomenal. It's right up my alley. But before we stop talking about that project, I do want to ask, what has Jack's response been to how successful it already is? And you still got 2 weeks left.
He's getting very enthusiastic. He's planning everything. You know, he's planning all the next projects, and I'm like, whoa, slow down, Jack. Let's just get the first one done, shall we? You know.
Yeah.
So it's definitely invigorated him. He's sort of he's about to set up an empire at this stage. So I'm trying to keep him you know, keep his feet on the ground a little bit, and it's like, let's just start with this book, shall we, Jack, and then we'll take it after that. Yeah.
Well, you know, like I said, I'm very happy for Jack. I'm very happy for you, who's helped bring this this book to everybody's life that's helped, you know, that's backed the project so far. I hope you guys get a lot more people, because like I said, it looks awesome. Make sure to pick that book up as well.
You won't regret it. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds exactly like something I would love. Like you said, you love mythology and all that stuff. That's exactly the type of stories that I love reading about. And I mean, hopefully I can find one, and it doesn't. It's not like a shit ton of money on eBay, because that tends to happen to me a lot when I.
No, you can still get the whole set of the Titan books, and I don't think they're too crazy. But they're really recommended. They're beautiful hardback editions, and they're great. It's 6 volumes. and it's a fascinating body of work. It really is.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely pick that up. And anybody listening, go get those as well. So we talked about Green Lantern's ending. I know you're working on something else that you can't talk about, but are there any other projects in the works that you maybe can talk a little bit about?
I have so many things I want to do. It's crazy. I can't believe how fast the last 5 years has gone. Since Wonder Woman, it still feels like yesterday, and I think I'm still sort of pinching myself that, because it was hard getting. This is the other thing. I kind of slipped under the radar myself for a good 10 years. You know, I had a great start back in the early 90s, and you know, I got to do some of the big books, doing the X-Men and the Hulk and all of those books, and then it happens to a lot of people. They slip under the radar and they don't fully know why, and the fight back can be long and arduous. And I think, you know, part of this whole thing with Jack is seeing that and appreciating that really what he's gone through is what had already happened to me, and I've sort of clawed my way back to some sort of prominence within the industry, and had eventually some lucky breaks with, you know, Jim Lee really went to bat for me on Wonder Woman, and you know, it opened the doors up, and DC have been amazing. I think for a while I was almost overly grateful for that, and just like happy to take whatever. And I'm now sort of more at a point where I'm feeling like, okay, I'm 5 years in. I've had consistent work, back-to-back work at DC. They've been great, but I do have things I need to do for myself and dreams of my own, you know. So I'm pushing to write more. I'm pushing on. So I've got a few creator-owned stories of my own that I'd really love to do. There's one that I did share some art from that's called the Ghost and the Sword. That's an epic story that I would really like to get to, but it's still looking for a home. But you know, again, I'm very happy working with DC. I've got some stuff in the pipeline there. I've got a few different pitches. People keep asking for a follow-up to The Brave and the Bold. I'm trying to figure out a way that if I can do that, or how I do that, or whether there's a way to sort of tie some of the other ideas into a pitch that could maybe work with that. We'll see. But it's I mean, big problem, nice problems to have, you know. I'm happy to be busy, and I'm very much, you know, loving my life at the moment and my work. I don't think I've ever enjoyed my work as much as I have over the last few years. It's been a pleasure. I hopefully that translates onto the page.
It does. It definitely does. You know, like you're talking about wanting to write and write a little bit more, and you got your creator own stuff. You know, don't just wait to find a home, man. Just throw that on Kickstarter too, because I know that tons of fans, and it'll help fund the book. And you know, I mean, there's plenty of projects that you know I've backed on Kickstarter, and sometimes I don't see anything for a year. You know what I mean? I definitely think that's one avenue you should do. And
there's a lot in the pipeline, and I've got another novel coming out later in the year through Roots Publishing. That's Reuts, okay. And it's a sort of it's a fantasy novel. So it's set in the same universe as God Killers, but it's a standalone, so you don't need that other book. So that's going to be fun. And then there's also my first novel, which was God Killers. That was from 2008. That came out, actually 2007. That one came out, but it's finally going to be on Audible, and it's being read by Ian Shaw, who's Robert Shaw's son, which is great. He's an amazing actor himself, and he's a dead ringer to his dad, you know, from Robert Shaw from Jaws. And he's just he sounds like Richard Burton when he's reading the book. It's incredible. So I'm very excited about that one coming out. And I've got to hear the whole thing. I've only heard snippets of it, and it's so good. It's really exciting. Yeah, that's going to be fun, because that one sold really well in England. It had like 6,000 sales in England for his regular bookshops, but it didn't really cross the Atlantic. So a lot of Americans haven't read my novel, my first novel. So this is my third one. So I do keep writing stuff. It's it's just a matter of time. There's just not enough hours in the day. That's the problem.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. There's definitely not enough hours in the day. Before I let you go, I do want to ask another question. Like, you know, I know you're a busy man, right? You're drawing, you're writing, but what books or creators are you currently like really into right now? Maybe even some that we aren't aware of.
I love what Tom and Mitch did with the Mr. Miracle series. You know, I just those two as a creative team, I think are great. You know, they're just
Yeah.
really, really good. So that one I love. Pretty much anything by Sean Murphy I'll pick up. He's just so good. But I am slammed. I'm not. I still pick up old stuff. You know, I just picked up. Sorry, there's Dave McKean Pictures That Tick book.
Oh,
You know,
nice.
I can never get enough Dave McKean. I've always loved his stuff.
Yeah, his
So
stuff's amazing.
quite often I'm just picking up, you know, a lot of the old stuff. And I have been revisiting, largely because of the Green Lantern, I've been revisiting a lot of my favorite sort of 80s and 70s artists, people like Jim Burns, who did an amazing book with Harry Harrison called Planet Story back in the day, a fully illustrated science fiction story that nobody seems to know about. It's an amazing book. And Mobius, I never get sick of looking at Mobius, and I never get sick of Wally Wood. And you know, I recently got the big black and white artist edition of the Wally Wood book, which again I can't stop pouring through. Barry Smith, I'm looking forward to his monster book finally coming out. My God.
I know that book isn't it? It's like 400 something pages, isn't it?
I know.
Massive.
I know. There's just been a massive hole where Barry Smith should be in the last decade or so, you know, and it's I'm very excited to get that one back, get him back into the comic world.
Yeah, same here. Speaking of artist editions, when are we gonna get a Liam Sharp artist edition?
Well, that's the thing. I guess that's out of my hands. Although that we are talking about doing a follow-up Kickstarter with just an art book of my stuff, because that's one thing people keep asking for, and I think we're going to just do a lot of the black and white art, and we'll see. I mean, it's a quite hefty career I've got now, so there's a lot to go in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of planned for later in the year. So I'll see how that goes.
All right, cool, man. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing the Jack Katz book in print. I'm looking forward to any project that you got coming up. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of yours. And
Thank you, man.
before I let you go, before I let you get back to all your work that you got, could you just really quick share where everybody listening or watching can find you online? And I'm also going to drop the links down below.
Yeah, so obviously there's sharpie.net, sharpy.net is my website. And then I'm on Twitter, it's Liam R. Sharp on Twitter. And there's a Facebook page too, which is that? I'm not sure if that's Liam R. Sharp as well, it might be. Yeah, Liam R. Sharp, liam.r.sharp on Facebook. And yeah, they're the main places. I've got an Instagram page. I think that might be Liam R. Sharp too, but I don't know. I lose track. There's too many things, you know. Yeah, I should be fairly easy to find on Instagram.
All right, cool.
And yeah, just that's it. And of course, there's the Sharpie Jack Katz book. That's where our projects will all be. That's all Sharpie again. That was my old school nickname, Sharpie. It's quite maybe unoriginal, but easy to remember.
I mean, it's a good nickname, man.
So yeah.
All right, cool, man. Well, thank you again for taking time out of your day to chat with me. It's
pleasure, Ryan.
Talk to you, and you can bet that I'm going to be hitting you up again next time you got something coming up. I'm definitely want to pick your brain about that as well.
Okay, mate. Well, maybe when this next series is announced, we can hook up again. That'd be good.
All right, sounds good, man. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again.
Cheers, Ryan. Take care, and same to you.
You too.